Looking at the land bid and also the surrounding transaction, this could be a reason why we should not be looking at the sand.
Welcome to another episode of Singapore's Real Estate Explained, brought to you by the JN Investments team. And today we'll be talking about
The sand. It's a new launch that came out in D21, in Upper Bukit Timah area, very deep in, and the last that came out was this condo called Verdale. But before we start, today we have a new face over here. His name is called Zach, and he's actually our property investment strategist. And one of them who actually been behind the scene, working hard, and today he has come on board. So Zach, may you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Zach. So I'm one of the portfolio strategists in the GNA Investments team, working very closely with Chris and Grace, who you guys are familiar with. So for me, I've benefited a lot from these episodes. So yeah, finally, I'm here in the studio. So really very excited to be here.
So I'm very happy to have you here too. So without much further ado, let's jump straight into analysis.
Yes.
So before we start, let's thank our clients who have supported us thus far. Currently, we gathered our 204 5-star Google reviews, and this is something very encouraging and we hope to validate through our services. Also, our channel has grown to close to 17.2k subscriber, done over 643 videos, and still growing. And this is something that we are always very excited to share about, because this is a channel where we are adding value through our investment series and also our home tour series.
Yes.
Also, in terms of investment track record, we have served close to 800 investment clients out of 4,000 clients we have served. And for these clients where we have value in terms of services, we're looking at about 19.56% average annual returns on equity. And if you'd like to find out more how to restructure your portfolio, okay, do scan your QR code right below, and we're more than happy to value to you with our investment team.
Yep. And if you are in the market looking for some clarity in terms of your investment needs, or you just want to have some questions to speak to us about, please feel free to scan the QR code below, and we'll have someone to reach out to you as well.
And also, we've done up a supply and demand analysis for District 21 in this area where you have the sand, to see whether is there an oversupply or is there a high demand in this area. So if you're keen to find out more, we have actually done the analysis. Scan the QR code right below, and I'm more than happy to validate to you. All right, without much further ado, let's begin this analysis. Okay, Zach, can you bring us through this property?
Of course. So a quick introduction about the sand. So the sand is actually sitting on a site area of about 19,000 square meter. So I would say it's quite a generous plot at this point, comparing with all the other new launches that we have been seeing so far, right?
Yes.
Tenure is 99 years. Right, 347 units, TOP about Q2 of 2029. And something interesting for them is that they're actually launching with 5 blocks of 10 stories. So this is something that we'll cover later as well, looking at the master plan. And interestingly, for the car park lots, they are actually almost 1-to-1 with 4 accessible as well. And then, so developer is Sustain Land. Maybe Chris, can you share with us a little bit more the background of the developer and how they have been performing so far?
Yeah, so Sustain Land is very interesting. The last they've done is this project called Sky Everton, a freehold project all the way near the Cantonment area. And they are quite well known to do like boutique projects, not like the 1,000, 2,000 units, or usually ranging about 200 to about the 400 range. In fact, the previous one they did was 30 residences. So they haven't been entering to the market for some time until this plot, which they interestingly bid at a pretty decent entry price. So it is priced sensitively. There could be an opportunity, but it really goes back to the developer whether they are greedy or not to want to launch at the right price. So let's run through a little bit more about this area and location. You look at the plot ratio for this land, it's actually ranging about 1.6, okay, which is considered low. Maximum number of stories about 12. So rationale is because around this area there's a lot of landed enclave. So usually when it comes to landed, the surrounding plots, okay, usually don't have very high plot ratio. It can be with high number of stories. And meanwhile, surrounding the area is all a forested area, which Zach will cover in a while. Okay. In terms of view, because it's surrounded by either landed or forested area, you can see 360 wise is quite decent, where either the unblocked forest view right here to the along the old Jurong Road, or you on the other side you actually have the unblocked landed view. So I guess it's a pretty decent kind of development. If you buy a mid to high floor, you can get a decent view in this area.
Yep. For sure. All right. So zooming out from on the map itself, you can see that the sand is literally at the corner of the map, right? So this is actually sitting on the city fringe itself, meaning around the RCR region, which is the rest of central region. Just across the road itself, you will hit the outside central region, which is essentially like the outskirts already. All right. And then you also see the light blue area, which is essentially Beauty World area where you have all your eateries. And then the dark blue part at the end, over here, it's the King Albert Park MRT station. So something interesting surrounding the area is that, of course, like what Chris mentioned, they are surrounded by landed enclave. But also there is a plot of land right behind that is reserved for residential. And then there's even an unplanned or unannounced plot of residential, don't even have like the plot ratio.
Reserve site.
Correct, reserve site. And then there's also the green parts, which are all reserved for greenery. So that's why when Chris said there's unblocked view, I think that is something that we can rely on, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yes, in fact, one thing very interesting about this land plot at the back end, the residential plot, is the plot ratio is 1.92, which is very interesting because most of land plot usually is whole number, 1.4, 1.6, 2.1. But it's likely it's a land plot that was built a long time ago. They have been preserving this land and potentially looking at upcoming, I would say, launches of new launch if they want to really release this land. So this is something that is interesting to take note of, especially in area if you look at a mid to long term exit. And in terms of the land bid, okay, Sustain Land interestingly bidded 22% higher than second bidder. So people will say, hey, it looks like it's a bit higher, but later you see, actually, in compared to the whole market, it's actually one of the lowest land bid you can find in the RCR region today. Okay, rationale because potentially this is a very far in plot. I mean, that's why it's a little low in land bids, but let's see how it compared to the entire market. The second one that actually was second bidder was Capital Land, Capital Development, about close to 22% lower. But in terms of the land bid wise, you can see the break-even price. Okay, if you factor all the costs in, it's at 1,006 per square feet. Consider that this is actually a city fringe plot. Okay, although yes, debatably, you walk across the Old Jurong Road, it's actually an OCR plot. Okay, also central region, outskirt. But in terms of this land plot, if you were to look at a 20% profit margin, it's about 2,000 per square feet. It's almost like a city fringe selling at the outskirt kind of prices in today's market. So if this developer were to be more realistic and they launch at the right price, potentially we can see that there is some upside potential. But if they're greedy and want to launch at RCR price, then we have to reassess to see what kind of price they will launch at.
So yes, so like what Chris mentioned just now, right? We talked about comparing the land prices. We looking at this chart, it's very interesting. You can see that for the sand, land bid is about 841, comparing to even Bukit Panjang EC, Woodlands EC. It's not too far away, which is quite a rare sight, I would say. And then of course, comparing to the rest of the GLS for the private condo sales, it's actually almost 50% cheaper. So this is something really interesting to see to have the sand at that kind of pricing, being able to beat at that pricing.
Yes, in fact, you can see even at Chuan Grove, which is recently at Lorong Chuan area, I consider OCR/RCR area, the PSI will hit 1,376 per square feet. And meanwhile, of course, you can see Dungeon Road and Holland Plain, which is Holland and Dungeon area, which is like CCI is 1,004. This is the recent land bid transaction. And even you look at most of RCR, usually the land bid price per square feet per plot ratio usually going at 1,002. So the sand is interestingly being way lower. So it really depends, as I mentioned, as to how the developer will price it. And let's take a look at the resale price. And from there, we can be able to judge whether this will be a considered buy or not.
Yep. Definitely. And also looking at the unit mix itself, you can see there's only 10 units of one bedroom out of the 347 units. So you can see, I think it's quite obvious now that developers know that one bedders are not in demand. So that's why out of these, there's only 10. Something recent as well for Springleaf Residences, they also released about 10 out of 900 units.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can tell for one bedder, the demand isn't really quite there as well. So that's why comparing with like 2-bedder, 3-bedders, that's actually the most of the mix. So I would say for them, they are, I would say, primarily targeting more of investor, a mix of investors and own stays, but more focus on
so like almost like 50-50 in between. So it's like, it's not really targeting investor fully focused, or is it own stay, but they try to match both for this.
All right. So of course, what we want to compare is of course against the RCR new launches that will be upcoming. So so over here we have Lindenwoods, Ori, which Chris has also bought into, and Bloomsbury as well. So I would say number of unit types is not too far of a difference, except for Ori having 777. So yeah, so TOP, it's similar timing, 2029, 2030. Developers, we have CapitaLand for Lindenwoods, we have CDL, Frasers, Sekisui for Ori, and then from Bloomsbury, we have Qingjian Realty.
For as one of the more accurate comparative is actually Bloomsbury, because it's very not near the MRT, but it's about 358 units. So I will guess we'll use that as a benchmark. The developer are willing to launch the kind of prices potentially is the most closest comparative we can look at. Right. So let's take a look at each of the bedrooms that will be sold. Okay, we start with the 2-bedder for Ori, Lindenwoods, and Bloomsbury. You can see Ori, the 2-bed 1-bath is about 1.48 million. The 2-bed 2-bath is a 1.8, and then up to the 2-bedroom plus study is about 2.119 million. So this is the range of a good location, which already next to Toa Payoh for the 2-bedder that's selling back then. Then here Lindenwoods, also next to Cambridge MRT. Okay, interestingly, 1.4 plus million. Okay, 1.9 million, slightly higher for 2-bed 2-bath, and followed by a 2.3 million at a higher range for the 2 plus study. Then meanwhile, Bloomsbury, which I would say the more accurate representation, is our 1.3 plus million for the 2-bed 1-bath, all the way up to 1.6 for 2-bed 2-bath, and then the 2-bedroom plus study, or rather it's actually like a 2-bedder but a bigger living area without the study corner. It's about 1.87 to 1.9 million. So it's something that's interesting in the market. And the sand, okay, that's our prediction. Potentially it could be 550, 60 square feet. It could be 527. We are using a last year transaction as an estimate because we can't get any numbers. It launched about 1.2 million, I would say, in the OCR and RCR area. Potentially it will move because of prices. And meanwhile, even at 646 square feet at 1.485, it will be the average kind of prices within the RCR area. In fact, lower than that. And then from there, it will be something that people may be looking at to consider, but the lower, the better. That's something that we have done our studies for that to see what is the entry price to enter. That's be something we can discuss at the site. Yep. Okay. Next up is the 3-bedder. For 3-bedder, for Ori, you can see is for the compact layout. Interestingly, it was very priced attractively, about 2.1 million. Okay, for 3-bedder, I would say premium is about 2.6, and something that is higher floor is 3 million. Okay, meanwhile, for Lindenwoods, 2.3 is the starting from price, 2.8 million is the average, and then 3.4, they have done very big floor plate for premium layout. Yeah. Crazy prices, but people are still buying into it because of size. Yeah. Then last but not least, the more accurate one that potentially that the sand can be benchmarking against about 2.1 million, 2.3 million for average, and up to 2.8 million for the premium layout with a study, 3 plus study. So you look at the sand, if the sand were to launch a compact layout and they price it sensitively with a compact layout of, okay, 818 is the recent ones that we see for like Penreef, but I would say about 900 square feet, it will be reaching about 2 million. I would say it's still a decent entry price for starting from for that of RCR project like / OCR. But meanwhile, if you look at the 3 plus study, about 2.2 million plus flexi, it will be something that is decent for attractive price as compared to that of the new launches in the market today. But of course, for us, we have a walkaway price, and the lower this price is, the better it is.
Right. Of course. So with that, we also want to look at the 4-bedders as well. So Ori, we have a range of about 2.92 million, all the way up to 3.5 million, right? And then with Lindenwoods, it's about 3.6, all the way up to 4.2 million as well. And then for Bloomsbury, like what Chris mentioned, something that is closer to what we are looking at for the Sen, about 2.8 to 3.832, right? So again, the predictions of the Sen, looking at about launching at 2.3, at 1227, we are looking at about 2.8. So comparing to Bloomsbury is actually towards the lower range. Yes. So yes, again, price, the entry price needs to be right.
Yeah. One thing for 4-bedder, cannot just look at entry price, you must understand what is the demand area. Even for example, in certain areas, the 4-bedder can be very cheap, but in the area, there's no one who's looking into the 4-bedder. Yes. So it's something we need to assess, very different for Blooms, Lindenwoods, Ori, and even the Sand area. And you have to really have a proper analysis of supply demand based on different bedroom types, and then from there to see whether you should enter into this project.
Yeah, right. Correct. All right. So with that, we also want to, of course, looking at the new launch. After looking at that, we also have to look at the resale. What are some things that are already in the market? How are they performing so far? And then we can also have a kind of like have a good gauge of where the Sand should be as well.
Yes.
Okay. So looking at the Sand nearby condos, we have Verdale, which is right next to it, literally.
Yes.
All right. And then we have Daintree, which is slightly further down as well. So Verdale, I would say the number of units is about the same, 258, 327,
In
around
fact,
that
smaller.
range.
It's smaller.
Yeah. And the thing is, they only recently TOP 2023, 2024. And then tenure is about the same, 99 years as well. And then different developers, C and C for Verdale, and then Setia for Daintree. So in terms of the age gap, I would say it's not too far away, about 5-6 years ago. So I think it's really quite a good gauge, especially looking at the two of them. They're also quite near in terms of age to each other also.
Right. And in terms of the PSF, recently they are hovering about the 2,000 range. Okay, you can see they went up quite a bit, with Daintree making about close to some even 29 to 30% gain from the day they bought as a new launch. And Verdale also similarly about less than that, 15% to 20% kind of returns. And one thing to take note is Daintree, if you had bought back then in 2021, there was actually a dip in price, which came in nicely. If had some clients who bought there and have profited today. But meanwhile, for Verdale, I'm holding on to the price very strongly and then subsequently letting the market pick up. Yeah, so why we are looking at these two condos, because they're the closest comparison to that of the Sand, and looking at whether the Sand can launch at close to the resale price. Okay, that is something that's very important. And if we have a developer who is more price sensitive, not greedy, and then we are able to hedge on this to be able to leverage on a good entry price to enter into this project. But the key thing is, if they are very greedy and way higher than our walkaway price, then for us, we may not want to enter this project. So let's take a look how it compares when you look at the resale projects.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at the Sand itself, for one bidders, so we are looking at transactions for the past 1 year, kind of more accurate in terms of the comparison as well. So for Verdale, we only had one transaction, which is at 935,000. For Daintree, there's no transactions. So again, going back to the demand of one bidder is quite clear lah.
Yes.
Where is the market heading to right now? Okay. And then looking at the floor plan itself for one bidder, I would say it's quite standard layout right now, comparing to the new launches or whatever one bidder there is. Balcony size is not too bad. Of course, comes with an open kitchen and then one bed, one bath as well lah. Right?
Yes.
And then their transacting prices is about 935, which is for Verdale. And for Daintree, the last was about 983. That was back in 2021.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And you can see in a while later on why is 2021 they buy 983.
Yeah.
And today Verdale, which is down the road, also trying 935. So Daintree, the one bidder, they actually bid and bought at a pretty high price.
Yes.
And now they are having trouble liquidating because the fact that even something that we tried recently at Verdale is only about 935K. Yeah. So that's why it's very important to understand what is the entry price to enter for every single unit type. And of course, one bidder is something that I think we heard multiple times in our podcast. We don't recommend one bidder. We are always rather that you hold and buy something else with a bigger layout than a one bidder new launch.
Yes.
All right.
Definitely. So so we also want to look at the performance for the Verdale one bidder. So for them, actually, there is actually a difference in terms of per square feet and pricing. And what we can notice here is actually they are launching at something that is slightly lower than the market average. So in that case, then you can see in terms of the quantum wise, there's actually a pickup from there to try to catch up to the market average in that sense lah.
Yes, so you can see the quantum back then was 800 plus K for Verdale when launched in 2020. Meanwhile, the market average for new launch, one bidder new sale was going at 977K. So there's some things that we do catch in the market to make sure that we get into a project that make money. But of course, one bidder is measured out. We don't recommend, but this is just for studies of how we analyze property.
Yes.
And meanwhile, we can see on the hand for Daintree, the PSF, yes, 1,007 was pretty close, in fact lower than that of the market average. But what we noticed is within the market average back then, okay, Daintree was going at 929K. Okay, it was higher than that of the market average. So then the price is higher than the market average for one bidder. And not just that, comparing to the resale, okay, we need to really make sure that the entry price is right. Yes. Or else you'll be having right now, you see Daintree in the market now, there are a lot listing at 1+ million for one bidder. But no one is buying. It's because that, why not I go opposite for Verdale?
Yes.
That at 940K, 950K, and And it's still at 935 rather than getting something at 1 million when the location is about the same, the age is about the same. So it's some things that you need to be very, very about. And of course, just avoid one bidder. That's conclusion for here. Right.
Of course. Okay. Then with that, we also want to look at, so next we'll look at two bidders as well. Two bidders, of course, there's more movements. So for Verdale, we have our lowest at about 1148, right? And then all the way up to the highest at 1.5 mil. For Daintree, 1340. And then highest at 1670 as well. So with that, we also want to look at the floor plans of why that is the case, right? So looking at the floor plan for Verdale and Daintree, they are quite similar in a sense, but for Verdale itself is 2 bed, 1 bath. For Daintree is about 2 bed, 2 bath. So if you look at the pricing 1240 and 1390, last transacted both in 2025, which is quite recent. So again, going back to the demand, 2 bedders are easier to move than 1 bedder.
Yes, and one more thing to take note is a 2 bedder got 2 types, so a 2 bed 1 bath. This kind of interesting layout was quite popular in the 2019 to 2021 period. This era we have 1 master bath in the center and then 2 master bedroom side by side. But in the recent years, you also notice that this is getting not as popular.
Yeah.
So they actually do recommend getting more towards a 2 bed 2 bath dumbbell layout like what you see in Daintree rather than that of the 2 bed 1 bath layout in Verdale. But you can see we're trying at 1.24 million. If the sale launch about there and they really price sensitively with a more, I would say, dumbbell layout kind of floor plan, potentially it may move because the price is very close or best is below, then it's really something that is very interesting. But of course, if they launch it way high, they're very bullish. They're about 2.4, 2.3, that kind of range. They're hoping to hit the kind of PSF, then maybe it will be something that is not considering as much. And then one more thing, take note, the sand, 2 bed 2 bath, last one is 646 square feet, 1.485 million. I would say it's slightly higher than Daintree, which is something to take note if you want to compare to what to exit, what's the price to enter so they can exit later on for this area. Right.
Okay, so looking at the chart again, similarly for Verdale, we see it's a common trend. Basically, they launched lower than the market average. So that's why they actually were able to pick up even for the 2 bedder side as well. Okay, so for Verdale, you can also see similarly like the 1 bedder, they have actually launched it slightly lower than the market average in terms of both PSF and the quantum as well. So for quantum wise, market average was about 1.3 million. They actually launched at 1.14. So with that, you can also see an pick up from the time they actually bought up till 2022, right? So next we have Daintree. So for Daintree, slightly different. Same thing, PSF is very close in terms of the difference. Quantum wise also slightly closer in terms of the difference. But like what Chris shared earlier as well, there's actually a price dip. So if you look at it in the 3 years average, they actually didn't make as much for the 2 bidders.
So it really depends on when you enter. So we have some of our clients enter when the price dip at 2019. So it's not always the case that you launch, then you go and buy. It means you get a good purchase. Sometimes you need to really compare the market average to see what's the right price to enter. So in fact, one of my clients entered this 2 bed 2 bath at about 1.05. So there was a dip in price of about 100k, 80k. So if you enter back in 2019, you potentially will make much more, about 300-400k as compared to only 200k if you enter at launch day. So for us, we need to be very careful of this thing called entry price and not just blindly enter just because it's a new launch.
Yes, definitely.
And next, let's take a look at the 3 bedder. That's where things get a little more interesting. You'll notice 2 things. Number 1 is that the number transaction is higher. Number 2 is in terms of the PSF, it's actually higher than the 2 bedder in this area. Okay, so to look at the Verdale, the lowest transaction is about 2.06 million for the compact layout, all the way up to 2.2 million for something that is bigger. Okay, Daintree, 1.95 for 1001 square feet to the bigger units is about 2.345 million. So average about 2.1 million. So once again, if you benchmark again this price, you will see how does the sand, how is sand launched. If the sand launched at this kind of prices, potentially we can expect that from a comparison, there can be a good purchase price. And if you look at Verdale, 1001 square feet, the layout is actually pretty functional. Have a utility room, okay, a 3 bed 2 bath, with a decent living room area with enclosed kitchen, okay, at 2.06 million. It's then transacted this year, April 2025. And meanwhile for Daintree, it comes in with same thing, a flexi, we call it a utility / study. We have a 3 bed 2 bath, okay, at 1.95 million or 1,009, and this was actually last year. Yeah, so if the same were to launch about hovering about this price, okay, then that is when we can enter the right price. But one thing to take note is, interestingly, most of the PSF you'll see in one of the last few slides, the PSF over here for Verdale and Daintree is about 2,000, 2,001 per square feet. It's actually higher than the 2-bedder, which means that in this district itself, if you can try to go for a 3-bedder, most of the people buying here, if you notice, Upper Bukit Timah are mainly aiming for a good school, okay, within this area, family, own stay, 3-bedder. And if you know, for Daintree, it's within 1 km from Pei Hwa Primary, people love it. But meanwhile, for Verdale, there's actually one. Half of it is actually within 1 km, the other half is not. Yeah, so these are some things you need to factor in the location-wise to see whether this 3-bedder is worth considering. And if you go back to the past, okay, same thing for your Verdale, it's compared to RCR region for 3-bedder. It was at 700 per square feet, slightly lower than that of the RCR average. Okay, and meanwhile, the quantum is also about 50k lower, which is why it hadn't fetched a certain kind of returns. You can see it in a while, which I'll show in the last slide. Meanwhile, for the 3-bedder for Daintree, before they dropped price, so 1,006, it was very close to the market average back in 2018, 2019, and the quantum is actually the average of the RCR. About 1.68, 1.69 million range. So only when they dropped price later on in 2019, that was when people entered later on at 1.5 plus, 1.6 million flat. Those are the ones that can get the kind of high returns. But those who entered at the start may not get this kind of returns because it was actually at market average. Okay, last but not least, we look at the 4-bedder. So 4-bedder by itself, you can see Verdale. No one to take. There's only one listing in the market right now and no transaction. Potentially people are waiting for the SEN. They see how the SEN react. What's the launch price, then they will see what price they will get for the Verdale. So Verdale is actually halted by this, but Daintree as in is a bit more lucky. Before the SEN land was bidded, there are few transactions that happened at 3.25 million. So you can see layout wise, okay, Verdale, really typical 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-bedroom with 3 bathroom and 1 more washroom at the back. Decent kitchen area and a landscape living room. So I think it's nicely done up. 1410. Do take note, this 2 project is before area harmonization. So it does include the aircon latch. Okay, and the last transacted they bought is about 2.66 million in 2022. So today they are all listing about 3.1, making about 500k kind of gains. Okay, if they were to sell this place. But to take note, even at 2022 at 1,008 per square feet, they're actually reaching the end of the launch. So the price actually has shifted on 1,000 and 1,008, so it's on the higher side. Most of them got about 2.4 million back then. Okay, and meanwhile for Daintree residences at 3.25 million transacted recently in August 2025. I guess it's someone who may not know that the SEN is coming out, and with a better location near to Upper Bukit Timah, people are willing to accept this kind of pricing at about 3.25 million at close to 2,188 per square feet, highest transacted within the same area. And in terms of layout wise for Verdale, we can see it's a typical 4-bedder with a landscape living room, quite decent. Last transacted May 2022. And that was actually at the tail end of the new launch where the price had went up from 1,006 to 1,008. So they bought it at a high price 2.66. And then right now, a lot of them are asking at 3.15 million in the market. Only one listing for sale. Not many want to sell. Okay, so you can show the demand here of 4-bedder is higher than the supply. Okay, and meanwhile for Daintree, 1,485 square feet, actually pretty decent. Big living area, 4-bedroom office on one side, landscape living, and you have living and the dining segregated, which is quite nicely done out, and even a private lift. So it is no wonder it hit about 3.25 million, and now there's no one selling for Daintree at all. And you can see the rarity of the 4-bedder here is actually high, and that's why they can fetch about 2,188 per square feet within this area that hit a high record price. So if the SEN were to launch about this kind of pricing and below certain prices of a market price, then we can consider that it's a good entry price. Okay. And also, if you look at the resale summary for 4-bedder, it's already interesting. Compared to a 3-bedder, they actually launch it very close to the rest of Central region. Okay, but that potentially I think Verdale and Daintree think that this is people like big floor plate, like near a good school, so they just price it the premium into this. But at 1,008 per square feet, back then you can find better location in the whole Singapore near the MRT that is same price. So that's why for Verdale today to exit, back then bought at 2.551, which is slightly higher than RCR. To exit today, you don't see the kind of price growth gains as compared to that of 4-bedder elsewhere in the market. You can buy places like even Penrose, But it was about 2.1 million, and now they're selling 2.9 to about 3 million only. But right now, if you buy about 2.55 million back then, at this place like Verdale, you couldn't fetch the kind of returns. So it's very important to understand what kind of price you enter at a point in time as compared to the whole market, rather than blindly jumping because you love the location and it's one in Upper Bukit Timah for some reason. Alright, so for Daintree, you can see when they launched at the start, it's about 1,734 per square feet, okay, higher than the market average. So one reason potential is because it's 1K to Pei Hwa. So people say, wow, good school, you should get it. And the developer thought that will help to allow the sale to move by itself. But what you see is when the price is higher, okay, not just in terms of PSI, but also in the quantum back then is 2.7 million as compared to the average 4-bedder in RCI, it was only 2.2 million. When these kind of prices are high, those were bought back in 2.7. Today, they will barely make 400k, which is not great return. Okay, decent return, but not as great as those 800, 900k that we see for a 4-bedder. But the one that actually made about 700 plus k you see in a while, actually bought it after the discount at 2020 at 2.5 million. So we can get this kind of deal. Naturally, the returns will be much higher. So if you look at the final returns for Verdale, okay, and Daintree, you see, notice two main things. First thing first is in this area, if you like to really make the kind of returns, the 3 to 400 plus K returns, try to get the 3-bedder. Albeit the returns of the usual 2-bedders in the area, because the fact that in that area, a lot of people are looking for own stay or 3-bedroom. And the one that make the most interestingly is Daintree, the 4-bedder, 742k.
Yes.
And to take note, people did buy 1,008 last time, but they're not selling because they want to sell even higher. But this individual bought 168 per square feet after the price discount, they make 742. So you can go higher, like 400 plus K, the 3-bedder. You try to go for those and you can get 4-bedder even better. The demand in this area is much higher as compared to the 2-bedders or the 1-bedders even. So it's something that we have derived a conclusion. But keening regardless, you can see even Daintree. It's very important. Daintree at 1,005 per square feet at a 2-bedder also make 300 plus K, the 400k, which is quite decent. So once again, it doesn't rule out that 2-bedder cannot buy. But the key thing that boils down to is the entry price. What entry price you buy. So yes, in terms of looking at the land bid and also the surrounding transaction, the key thing is there can be a reason not to buy into the same. If the price is actually entered at the wrong pricing and the developer is greedy to want to fetch as high profit margin possible at the market price rather than pricing sensitively, and that is when we need to be wary.
Yes.
Alright, so with this, we come to the end of this video. Usually we do a wild approach, but this is part 1. When the floor plan is out, you will be doing a more detailed analysis to really see should this a buy, wait, avoid. So if you are keen to find out more about the supply demand analysis, once again, we have the QR code right below. You can scan it and I'm more than happy to send it to you. And next, we also have done up like an investment analysis of this project, a more in-depth one. If you're keen to find out more, once again, you can scan the QR code right below and approach any of our investment analysts, and I'm more than happy to break down the numbers for you. And with this, we'll come to the end of this video. My name is Christian.
My name is Zach.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.